think, Marge. All I need is a title.
This is Megan Fox. She's a successful actress, model, and mother of two. This is also Megan Fox. She's also a mother of two. And she's a creationist who recently audited the Field Museum's Evolving Earth exhibit.
Hey everyone, Sir Skeptalot here. I thought I'd bring you all along on my trip to the Field Museum. There's a brand new exhibit on the evolving Earth. Come on! Ooh, the Evolving Earth exhibit. I don't even know where to start. Excuse me, miss? Excuse me, are you a guide? Can you help me around? Show me what I'm looking at here?
I don't know how to say this word, so I'm just going to pretend that I know how to say it.
You are about to make a hugely opinionated comment on this subject, but yet you can't pronounce the word eukaryote? Perhaps you should come back and comment when you can.
Are you sure you're a guide? It's pronounced eukaryotes. Eukaryotes.
Eukaryotes?
Yes, eukaryotes.
All right. Here's another interesting thing. Now they're going to tell you that this is how evolution of the cell began.
Hey, that sounds like a great place to start. I mean, that's basically the beginning of life, right?
Eukaryotes are different from other cells because they have a nucleus which contains the cell's DNA, blah, blah.
You just blah blah blahed your way through a good chunk of information which you are about to criticize heavily. Do you not think it'd be good to give at least the appearance that you know what the hell you are talking about?
Blah.
Oh no. You just blah 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 the beginning of evolution.
At first, all eukaryotes were single-celled, and many still are today. What? If many still are today, then that would support the theory that they have never changed.
Eukaryotes are, at the end of the day, still DNA-based forms enclosed in a nucleus. The possibility that they have not changed over a very long period of time does not mean that they have not evolved at all. It could be that eukaryotes have evolved different structures within themselves to allow them to survive in various environments. Evolution, which you just blah blah blahed your way past, explains that the process may take hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years for the changes to happen.
Which theory that they've never changed? There is no theory that they've never changed.
That they have always been as they are today. Not that they started someplace else and then are here, but they were always this and still are today.
Honestly, I can't tell what point she's trying to get across here, but I do know that it seems especially arrogant that within a few seconds of saying she doesn't know how to say the word eukaryote, she goes on to explain with confidence why she thinks she knows more about cell biology than the hundreds of thousands of PhD cell biologists who have dedicated their life to understanding the subject. But before she continues, I feel it prudent to point out her obvious psychosis. Megan here has fallen prey to the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is when somebody who has no idea what they're talking about overestimates their proficiency in a topic because they have yet to realize how much they don't know. I may make confident speculations about, say, black holes, but after reading a lengthy Wikipedia article on the subject, I may refrain from making so many positive assertions because I discovered that there is way more to them than I thought, and my half-baked ramblings have no basis in reality. So keep an eye open for signs of the Dunning-Kruger effect throughout her ramblings.
No, it suggests exactly what it is saying, that eukaryotic cells evolved at some point in the distant past from prokaryotes, and that both types of cells continue to exist today.
Can somebody help me out? Can I get a real guide here? I don't think this lady works here.
Living and extinct, this is not single-celled, including you, everything is made up of eukaryotic cells. Well, then doesn't that suggest that everything was made up of eukaryotic cells in the beginning also? That they weren't something else that became eukaryotic cells, that they are always and have been eukaryotic cells?
No, Megan Fox, because you're ignoring the fact that there are still millions, if not billions, of types of single-celled, non-eukaryotic creatures out there, which would suggest that eukaryotic cells evolved from non-eukaryotic cells.
None of this makes any sense. It doesn't make sense to a 5th grader, it doesn't make sense to a 3rd grader, it doesn't make sense to a 30-year-old. None of this makes any sense.
Well, how many 3rd graders have you asked? I'm sure there are some at the Field Museum. I can just see you going up to somebody else's child and asking them to explain the evolution of eukaryotes from prokaryotes. I can also then see you getting schooled by the 3rd grader right before the parent smacks you upside the head for daring to speak to their child.
Well, I don't know. I turned 30 in August, and it makes sense to me. And I'm a fucking idiot.
This is muddled thinking. This is thinking from, like, Darwin's thinking from, 100 years ago, and we should know better by now. We really should know better by now. Darwin once said, if the single cell is more complex than I think it is, then all of my theories, I'm going to have to start all over again. And between now and then, what we've discovered is that the single cell, if the single cell back then were, a Buick, the single cell now is a galaxy. So Darwin himself would have said, okay, back to the drawing board. None of this makes any sense.
As far as you go with that argument, you are correct. And Darwin did say something like that based on new information coming out, that he might have to rework his entire theory, which in fact he tried to do later in his life. However, the evolutionary theory does not depend on the work of Charles Darwin any more than the Big Bang depends solely on the research of Edwin Hubble, among others. Both of these, and in fact all scientific theories, are considered to be the most probable way the world works, but they are also under constant scrutiny and exploration to see if there is something that prior researchers missed. If something is discovered, that information is used to update the present theory, it is used to propose a new approach to the present theory, or it is used to postulate a new theory.
Reality does not change because one person 100 years ago got a few things wrong in a book. Reality is reality, and the reality is evolution is a fact. Yes, Darwin got lots of stuff wrong in his Origin of Species, and he got stuff even more wrong when he tried to improve on the Origin of Species, but a lot of it turned out to be true. So we're not building our scientific theories on everything that Darwin wrote.
But yet we're still stuck with 100-year-old science. It's disgusting.
This isn't the Bible. We're not stuck with this. It's not written in stone. We don't have to apologize for the things that he got wrong. We improve upon them. We've changed a lot. The scientific community has evolved the theory of evolution to fit reality.
That makes me so angry. Again, angry.
Why get angry at something like this? Something doesn't agree with your predetermined way that the world works. Big deal. The same thing happens to me as well, but I don't get angry about it. I use it to evaluate and test my own view on the subject. If I figure that what I'm seeing makes more sense than my original views, then I change my views to bring in the new, more correct information. Otherwise, I reject the new information as rubbish and move forward. But it's nothing to get cryingly angry about.
Well, I don't think that's anger. I think you're just confused. Oh, evolution of sex. This looks good. Hey, lady. I want to see this. It looks good. Ooh, this is all Precambrian stuff. Oh, it's so cool. When the definition between plant and animal was harder to define. Oh, man. Animals were basically just plants with soft cell. Oh, look at this scene.
This is where it starts getting nice.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. The Cambrian explosion is where shit got real. This is some of the coolest stuff you'll ever see.
This is where they actually put facts down, and you can look at facts. Because these are the animals that they've studied and have skeletons for, and so now we can start seeing about these creatures and what they did and what they were like and what are they made out of, and this is where there's actual science that we have.
I'm sorry, Megan, but to suggest that skeletons are what's required to create real science is asinine. We have backwards engineered DNA and successfully mapped out the evolution of many different types of cells and organisms. We do not need physical skeletons. What the skeletons do, though, is give us a better idea of what things looked like and how they interacted with their environment, but this is not real science because there are skeletons. There's lots of other real science that doesn't require skeletons.
See? Fossils. That's science. Don't tell me how they got into existence, because you don't have a clue.
Except that the entire field of evolutionary science is basically nothing but clues on how these life forms came into existence.
You don't have a clue.
I'm starting to feel that I have a better clue than you do.
I don't want to hear about your theories and your stupid theories about how these creatures came from one cell when you can't prove it to me. You can't prove it. No one can prove it. Oh, but well, we think that that's what happened. No, just show me the animals. Tell me about them. Don't tell me that you know exactly how they came to be, because you don't.
We still don't have all of the fossils that are on the planet, and even if we did, it would not give us a complete picture on what was happening during the evolution of life. Just because you can't understand something enough to pronounce the word properly does not mean that the information being presented is wrong. It means you need a better understanding of what the information is trying to say. After you have that understanding, you can make better arguments against it if you still disagree with it.
Well, you're right about one thing. We don't know exactly. But not knowing exactly and not knowing that something did happen are two completely different things. We do know that it happened. We do know that things evolved. We don't know a lot about the Precambrian, and we are struggling to figure out how the single-celled world really worked. But that's because single-celled organisms do not leave fossils. Precambrian organisms did not leave fossils. That doesn't mean you win. That doesn't mean the Bible's right.
And don't tell my children that you know either. That makes me angry. I would prefer that we just tell them it's okay not to know. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Shut up! That's just... morons! I'm surrounded by morons!
There are a lot of I don't knows in science. Science is filled with I don't knows. But to turn to a child and lie to them about what we don't know when we have evidence and information that points in a certain direction, that's being dishonest, and it is never good to be dishonest about science.
I agree, Megan. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. That's one of the things I love about science. You know, you should try it sometime, because as we'll see later on, you don't seem to know anything. About anything.
This is really cool, though, isn't it? Prehistoric ocean. Sometimes I think the ocean is so darn big. Who knows? Some of these things might still be down there. No one would ever know.
Megan, the animal you're looking at, that tiny alien beastie, Opabinia, went extinct about 500 million years ago. So I wouldn't count on finding a live one.
Yes. Actually, you're correct. It's very unlikely, but you're correct. It would be neat. I'd love to see some of these creatures in action. They're so alien to what we're used to today. Oh yeah, we gotta give the camera some trilobite love. I love these little things. Look at all the different types they got here. This is so cool.
I can't argue there. Trilobites are pretty badass. These diverse little bastards were around for almost 270 million years, making them one of the most successful arthropod groups in history.
Where'd you go? Ooh, giant squid. Where'd you go, lady? Do you think we should get a real guide here? You know, you have a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers here.
How do they know this? Okay, if you're talking about 470 million years ago, these are just guesses off the top of their heads.
If by guesses you mean painstakingly mapping the geology of the entire planet over a period of several centuries to begin to understand by the biostratigraphic relationship shared between geologic formations, or testing for radioactive decay from, say, potassium to argon thousands of times from different sites and then correlating and comparing the data to obtain multiple lines of evidence for the age of the earliest fossils of land plants known to man, then yes, Megan, they're just guesses.
You obviously don't know much about the field of geology, then, which can tell us about the ages of various rocks and stuff, and under what conditions they were formed, and how they eroded, and so on.
No. I'm sure they're basing those estimates on rock layers.
First, I love how they write these things like, this is what happened for sure, this is what happened first.
It's called an educated guess based on the scientific evidence gathered over years.
Listen how dumb this sounds. First, the ozone layer, formed when oxygen began to accumulate in the Earth's atmosphere, provided protection from the sun's harmful radiation. Only the water had provided this protection before. How do you know this? It's a fairy tale. It's just a fairy tale. Just making it up. But we want the whole scientific community and everybody else is supposed to believe this.
One way we know this is because of the science of paleoclimatology, where geochemists can test for certain traces found in rock samples from various ages that allude to very specific climatological phenomena.
I've mentioned this study before, but rocks in Africa were recently studied, and their contents showed that oxygen formed around the 470 million year mark. There was little to no oxygen in the air before that time, and seeing as the ozone layer is made of oxygen, a pretty simple game of deduction will show that that's probably around the time the ozone layer formed as well.
Meanwhile, soils had formed. How do you know?
Rock samples.
How do you know?
Rock samples.
And this is all a guess, but look at the language. Soils had formed. Not soils may have formed. Soils had formed that could nourish plant life.
Well, if there was a time that soils did not exist, it's reasonable to assume through a simple game of deduction that there was a time in which they did form. And yes, this is a guess, but it is what we would call an educated guess, and it's based on rock samples.
The evidence of ancient soil can be found all over the earth. They're called paleosols.
And so here comes the plants. Yeah, well, it's a guess. Maybe. Maybe.
Even if we didn't have any paleosol samples predating the earliest land plants, we actually do, by the way, we would still know that there must have been soil for the plants to grow in. You do know that plants grow in soil, right, Megan?
I don't see you out there doing scientific research and coming up with a different hypothesis. All you are doing is sitting here throwing horse shit at something you admitted yourself you do not understand.
Not. But look at, no, there's no other explanation here. There's not one other explanation. Not, well, this could have happened, but maybe this happened. Maybe it all happened at once. Maybe it was alien created.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Maybe. No one knows. No one.
Yes, and maybe a giant turtle came out of the giant sea and the universe was on its back. Look, we could fill a museum with a bunch of maybes, just on this one exhibit of when soil formed. Do you know how big a museum would have to be to fill all the maybes that might have beens over the history of the universe? It would have to be a fuck ton bigger than the Field Museum, I can tell you that much. We only have so much information to go on. Yes, a lot of these are guesses, as you like to use the vernacular, but we prefer to use the word hypotheses and theories. And these are educated guesses based on years and years of research.
Oh look, Earth's first land plants were small and moss-like. Oh yeah? How do you know? Did you have a video camera there? Where's the tape? I want to see the evidence.
Well, Megan, seeing as the first camera was invented in 1826 and the evolution of land plants occurred some 450 million years ago, I wouldn't expect any photographic evidence. What we do have, however, are fossils, the direct evidence of ancient life.
Where's the evidence? Fossils? These fossils are the evidence because you have fossils of plants? This is the evidence I'm supposed to believe that these were the first plants? How do you know?
Just a moment ago, I recall you saying how glad you were to see the trilobites because you got to see the actual remains of the creatures in question. Now you're suspiciously skeptical. Why?
I would say that if we had fossilized remains of the first land plants, that may allow us to determine what these plants were and what some of their characteristics were. And by the way, were you not just saying that fossils are where the real science is?
Where they actually put facts down and you can look at facts. because these are the animals that they've studied and have skeletons for, and so now we can start seeing about these creatures and what they did and what they were like and what are they made out of, and this is where there's actual science that we have.
Didn't you just say that fossils are real science? You're the one that said fossils are real science.
They evolved from one type of algae, green algae. Not just a type of algae, they even know the type of algae. It was green. They know the color of it. It's green.
The Verde Plantae, the group to which green algae are assigned, is a monophyletic clade. The green part wasn't there just to sound good.
I think green algae is a type, not a color. Well, lady, you're in the museum. Look around. I'm sure it explains why. I mean, you have a smartphone, don't you? Just look it up. Here, let me Google it for you on my smartphone. Okay, it says here there's different types of algae. Photosynthetic protists, commonly called algae. A diverse group, divided into several phyla. Euglenoids, dinoflagellates. I'm probably butchering these names. Bacteriophyta, chlorophyta, that's the green type. There's cyanobacteria. It's usually called blue-green algae, but it's not really what it is. Phytoplankton. Everybody knows what plankton is. And then there's other brown, there's red, there's also multicellular. Those ones are usually referred to as seaweeds, though. And we know that most plants that we see on the surface today were evolved from the green algae because they share the same DNA traits. Oh, boom, there you go. Seems like just looking into some of the DNA research will just clear up most of your questions here, I gotta be honest.
So someone's going to have to fill me in. There must be a hidden videotape from 470 million years ago that these people all are in possession of.
I'm surrounded by morons!
Again, there are fossilized remains of these things. I'm sure somewhere there it says that. Can you not read?
Tell you what, Megan, if I ever find a video camera sandwiched between two Ordovician rocks, I'll let you know.
And haven't shared with the rest of us, because they know what happened 470 million years ago. Just like the weather people know how to predict the weather on Friday.
Oh, come on, lady, that's low. My uncle's a weatherman. I'm not even kidding, he really is. Chris St. Clair works for the Weather Network in Toronto. Weekend Weatherman. Follow him on Twitter.
And then at the very end, this is one reason scientists think land plants evolved from green algae. But what does it say here? What does it say here? They evolved from one type of algae. It doesn't say they think they did. It says they did. Then down here it says, well, they think they did. In real small, because you're not going to get down here. You're just going to read this part and go, oh, that's what happened. Doesn't anyone see how ridiculous this is?
The only thing I'm finding ridiculous right now, Miss Fox, is that you skip 30% of each sign to show that they start off with telling us what the theory is, and then they continue to explain why they think what they think, and then you're just skipping all the part where they're explaining why. It is intellectually dishonest to your audience.
And we have entire buildings, look at how much money has gone into this place to talk about this. No one really knows.
Yes, because most people understand the meaning of a theory. There were no humans around 470 million years ago, and scientists got information about probable conditions on the planet at that time from rock samples and fossils that they subjected to various dating systems to come up with a rough idea of what happened to what plant or animal and when it basically happened. This process is called scientific research, and from that you get a hypothesis that tries to explain something.
No, this museum is a teaching center, but it's also a monument to our hundreds of years of scientific research. This represents the vast sum of our knowledge. Museums. And museums are expensive, yes, but I can think of a few choice places that are true monuments to ignorance. And yes, these places cost a lot more than any museum.
Oh, look. It took around 50 million years. Why not 60? 70? Maybe it was 40. How do you know? Where's the video? Again, where's the video?
Where's the fucking video of Noah's Ark?
This is all just guessing. All of it. There isn't one bit of evidence here. Because guess why?
Because this is what that information looks like from the point of view of a real scientist. This is a short scientific article, and there are certainly articles that are more in-depth than this one is. But you can see that there is not much in the way of glitz. It doesn't have pretty pictures, and the wording and phrasing is a bit above what you would probably tell the general public.
Because it's just a poster, not the entire exhibit?
There's no missing links.
Oh.
Not all these so-called missing links, not one has been found. That is not a hoax, that is not a joke, that is not somebody's idea of a prank, or someone's idea of trying to get their theories made into laws.
Never in my entire life have I ever heard so much shit come out of one mouth. Everything she said was so wrong, it would seriously take a full 30 minutes to do it justice. But I don't have time for that, and I'm guessing you don't either, so let's just continue.
Something I'm missing here. Where is the controversial missing link in the evolution of plants?
Oh, so wait, you're talking about human missing links now? Because we're in the plant section right now. We're talking about the evolution of plants. And yes, there are several links. Look at the whole Jurassic and Triassic area plants that we have in our studies. We know lots of plants that used to exist that no longer exist but have relatives that are living today.
There is no such thing as a missing link. It doesn't exist. That's why it's called missing.
Oh my God.
They're missing. We don't have any examples of plants going from one type of plant to another type of plant. All we have are examples of plants that have always been algae, that has always been algae.
You obviously haven't studied the evolution of plants very much.
Oh my god, I'm getting lightheaded. Oh my. Every species is a transitional species. Every plant is a transitional plant. Just look at those fossils that are like 10 feet to your left. Those are transitional species.
And horsetails that have always been horsetails.
Horsetail? Horsetails are not organisms.
We're just going to continue to believe that there are missing links out there. We just haven't found them yet. That's got to be it.
Well, again, that material right next to you might explain the evolution of the plants on the display, as Armoured Skeptic said. He also pointed out that every living species, including us, is a transitional species. That is, we have evolved and are continuing to evolve.
Wait, are you going to tell me that you were saying there are no missing links while you're looking at fossils of plants? What the fuck? None of these plants exist anymore, by the way. I think that I'm starting to understand that the things that you like are the things that you can't refute offhand, because they are staring you in the face. And I guess plants can't stare you in the face.
This is the stuff I like. This is the stuff I like. Real fossils, about real animals that really existed.
We know, as you've explained before.
Where they actually put facts down, and you can look at facts. Because these are the animals that they've studied and have skeletons for, and so now we can start seeing about these creatures and what they did and what they were like and what are they made out of, and this is where there's actual science that we have and that we can look at and see and form our own opinions on. I don't like it when they tell me about stuff that they have no clue on Earth about and where nobody else is allowed to have an opinion.
Oh no, you're allowed to have an opinion, but let it be known that if your opinion is not an educated opinion, then your opinion is useless.
Big giant fish, teeth. That's fun.
Okay, focus, Megan. Come on.
Much like a parent with a video camera recording the first steps of their baby child, someone was around 370 million years ago to record the first steps of tetrapods from water to land. Because that's what they're telling you here. The tetrapods took their first steps around 370 million years ago. Who writes this stuff?
Maybe if you look to your left, you'll notice the nearly complete type specimen of Tiktaalik, one of the most important fossils ever discovered, which provides the best look into the origin of land-based tetrapods. You know, one of those missing links you were just going on about. Oh wait, it's not a missing link, because it's not missing.
Every time you open your mouth, it seems you are intent on demonstrating that you know little to nothing about everything. How you figure you are knowledgeable enough to audit a museum is beyond me, because so far you have shown yourself to be the poster child for idiocy while pretending to know something about what you're talking about.
Oh no, you didn't just make fun of Tiktaalik. You don't even understand what you're looking at right now. This is one of the greatest victories in paleontology ever. We got so good at predicting what would be in specific rock layers that they predicted that this first walking fish would be on a very specific layer. They went up to northern Canada, looked at this exact layer, and found this exact fish. Riddle me this, creationist.
How do they know this? They don't. Today, tetrapods include reptiles, birds, and mammals like you.
I'm sorry, are you denying that you're a tetrapod?
What's with your grumpy face?
Maybe they always had feet like that. Maybe that's the way they were made. With feet.
Maybe you'd be better at answering questions than you are at asking them. So, if the tetrapods were made with feet, who made them that way? This is not a trick question, by the way.
That could go like alligators, you know, that are in the water and the land?
No. You have to look at this series of fossils. This series of fossils that they discovered this through suggests that this is specifically a walking fish, not some alligator-like thing. This predates it, and we know because of the rock layers. If this Tiktaalik still existed today, or existed at the same time as alligators, we would find them on the same rock layer, but we do not.
Do you know how complex feet are? Feet, the human feet, are so complex that people who make robots have not been able to replicate feet. They can't make a robot with the same dimensions foot as a human being because it won't stand up.
There are a lot of factors that go into why humans can stand up on their 2 feet. The human foot is actually relatively simple, to the point that other animals have similar foot structures. A lot of what goes into the ability to stand up straight are things like balance and body structure, things that don't have much to do with feet.
Even when they make it with the exact same specifications as a human foot to a human body, they can't make it stand up. Why? They're so complex. The muscles, the muscle structure, our toes, and everything else, all our muscles work together to keep us standing up and not falling over.
And balance, which is actually a function of the inner ear, which is actually fairly complex, by the way.
Because technically, when you try to make a foot like the human foot, you can't do it. No one can do it. So are you telling me that it's an accident, just purely accident, fins became these incredibly complex feet?
Whether or not we have the ability to design or build something is not our standard to which we decide if things are designed or not. The fact that we can't build a foot ourselves is evidence that it did evolve, because nobody could have created it, because, like you said, it won't work if it's created. And boom goes the dynamite. I'd also like to point out here that she's looking right at a model of the Tiktaalik's foot, and it's showing exactly how it's comparable to modern foot designs, how it actually has bones that are shared by modern feet. That's really significant, and she's just ignoring that completely. Oh look, everybody, that's Grandma and Grandpa. Those are our direct ancestors. Yep, those are our direct ancestors. She's just walking right past them. Yep, don't talk about them.
Well, you know, you don't want to get into subjects that might be too uncomfortable now.
They're buying it. I'm teaching it. Just buying it. Buying it. 100% hook, line, sinker. Buying it.
I'm sorry, aren't you a homeschool mom that teaches her kids based on the Bible? I've already used the irony police once. Can't charge you twice.
Oh, and here's the thing that everybody is just trying to get to. You have to walk through all of that just to get to the cool dinosaurs. Really, that's all people want to see. They just want to see the dinosaur bones. They don't want to see any of that, except for maybe those arthropods and stuff under the water. That was cool.
Oh, I'm sorry. You find evolutionary history boring? Maybe that's why you're having trouble grasping it. I find that if I'm not interested in a subject, I don't have a lot of time to try to understand it, to absorb it. But if you got more involved, if you actually got interested, passionate about it, you might actually start understanding some of these theories. Then you get your head out of the frickin' Bible and start to realize the world's a little older than I think.
I can't really not cheat here, since I've seen numerous versions of this video. I can't tell you that the shit really starts to hit the fan here in a few minutes.
You know that feeling when you get so angry, you cannot help but starting to speak very softly and enunciating every single word you say to stay calm? Oh, just breathe. So, Megan, what you are telling me is that nothing that existed before the dinosaurs is interesting enough to go into a museum. Honestly, I'm offended, not just as an amateur paleontologist, but as a citizen of the Earth, that you would so blissfully disregard billions of years of some of the most beautiful and underappreciated life forms because they're not all big and scary. Earlier you were complaining that you were not seeing the truth, and now you seem to think that the first 3.2 billion years of life history isn't even worth seeing. You are beyond stupid, Megan.
But we could have done without all of that and just skip ahead to the dinosaurs, because this is what the kids come here to see.
Kids, immature, creationists, yeah, all on the same intellectual level, you're right.
See, I think they should just put these things in here and let people wonder and exclaim over them.
Wonderment and exclaiming over something? This is not a freaking church. These fossils and displays are meant to teach people the science behind certain things. In this case, the evolution of the planet and the evolution of the life forms living upon it. I guess there could be some amazement and wonderment about some of that, but what you are suggesting is that no one who goes to this museum should dig into the information there and try to learn something about what went on thousands or millions of years ago, which is not the goal of a museum.
You wouldn't rather understand them? I'm starting to definitely notice a pattern here with you.
Okay, so we went to the Indianapolis Children's Museum, which is a wonderful place, and they have the most real dinosaur bones in the area. I think in the country they have the most, because they have a huge lab there, and they have all these stegosaurus bones. They have some of the biggest finds at this Indianapolis Children's Museum. So we go down, there's a lab where you can watch them like taking the bones out of the casts, you know, and because they're constantly working there, and they have a skull on display that is clearly a dragon. There's no other way to describe it. It's a dragon skull. It's got horns, like here. It's got a long snout, big pointy teeth, bumps all over its face, bones. So you can imagine that the skin was stretched over this thing. It clearly looks like the dragons of drawings. Very clear.
Where's the videotape? I want to see the videotape. If there's no videotape, it didn't happen. Where's your videotape?
My kids, when we get down there, and immediately one of them says, "Mom, it's a dragon." And I look at it and I say, "My God, it is a dragon. I've never seen anything like that. It looks just like a dragon. It is. It's a dragon." And my mom says, "It's a dragon. Look at this." Well, the technician goes, "Oh, no. That's not a dragon. No. I'm like, "What do you mean it's not a dragon?" She says, "No, that's a dinosaur." Okay, well, yeah, but look at it. It looks like a, we know what we're talking about, right? Like a dragon with horns and the whole deal.
Meet Atrachichona acelti. It's a rare amphibian found in Brazil, but from the side it looks a lot like a gentleman's sausage. Therefore, it's a penis. Not an amphibian, it's a penis. I know what I'm talking about. It looks just like one, therefore it is one. Here's a penis pretending to be a vegetable. You can't hide from me, Mr. Penis. Here's a camel that also kind of looks like a penis. Maybe this isn't a camel then. Maybe it's actually a penis.
Oh no, it's not a dragon, no. Yeah, you gotta dash the little hopes of my children, because the imagination, they can't have it.
Yeah, because the job of a museum technician is to kowtow to the fantasies of you and your children. Science and knowledge don't work that way, and the technician was right to correct you. When a little child asked me to spell the word rabbit after a field trip to a farm, I gave her the correct spelling. The teacher told me that they just let the children spell things how they want to. But I responded that the child asked me to spell the word. She obviously wanted the correct spelling and asked the nearest adult for the information. Adults and places like museums should not be doling out false information just to satisfy the fantasies of anyone, but especially children.
Yeah, doesn't this lady know that children's imaginations trump scientific fact?
So then I ask her, "What's it called?" Now this is the best part. "What is it called?" She says, "Dracoris Hogwartsia." You know what that means? The dragon of Hogwarts. The person who found this dinosaur got to name it, and they named it Dracoris Hogwartsia, the dragon of Hogwarts. The cover of Time magazine is sitting right next to this skull. And the cover of Time magazine, they've put skin on it to make it look like... You know what the cover of Time magazine says? Dragons.
Yeah, because the imagination of the scientist who got to name the thing and the cover of a magazine meant for the layperson both trump the fact that we're talking about a dinosaur here. I did a search, and this is what I came up with for pictures of the Dracorex Hogwartsia. It's a pretty impressive specimen of the species, but if you look at the overall structure of the skeleton, you can tell that it is not a dragon, but as the technician told you, a dinosaur.
Dracorex hogwartsia is the name given to a nearly complete skull of what was thought to be a new species and genus of Pachycephalosaur, the group of mostly bipedal, herbivorous, marginocephalian, ornithischian dinosaurs. In 2007, Montana State University paleontologist Jack Horner provided some very compelling evidence that the skull simply represented a young Pachycephalosaurus. So it wasn't even its own species, just a very young morph of a larger species. And it wasn't named by the discoverer, by the way. The paleontologists who described the fossil allowed the public to vote on the name, and they voted for the name Dracorex hogwartsia. And if you think that the fact that it has the word dragon in the name is proof that it's a dragon, let me introduce you to the Dreadnoughtus, the most terrifying and unsinkable battleships of the early 20th century. This is also called Dreadnoughtus, a brand new sauropod dinosaur named on September 4th, 2014. Ken Locavara is the scientist who named the animal. So, do you think that the name means that Ken Locavara actually thinks this dinosaur is a giant battleship?
So the fact that the guy called it the Dragon of Hogwarts means that it's a dragon? Does this also mean that Hogwarts is a real place? Well, sorry, but it isn't. Sorry to kill the hopes of your kids. Or maybe not. Maybe the reason you thought Hogwarts was an actual place is because you don't allow Harry Potter books into the house, in which case your children's dreams were dead before they even had any aspirations to live. But anyway, let's have a little more fun with this creationist logic. This is called a Komodo dragon. Therefore, it's a dragon, just like this animal, the leafy sea dragon. This is called a Gila monster. Therefore, it's a monster. This is a pink fairy armadillo. Therefore, it's a pink fairy. This is called a chicken turtle. I'm not even kidding, it's really called that, look it up. We can do this all day, Megan. Ice cream cone worm, fried egg jellyfish, hooters, boobies, tits. Get the picture yet?
And the thing is, it looks just like a dragon. We have to ask ourselves, do we believe, there's no evidence yet of flying dragons, of, fire-breathing dragons. However, there's plenty of people around the world throughout the ages who wrote these stories about dragons, who drew pictures of dragons, who said they saw dragons. And then we have this dragon skull that looks exactly like a dragon that people have drawn from the story.
And there have been many people who claim to have been abducted by aliens. If I look at old artwork and stories, I can impose my ideas of aliens wherever I want. So what? Look, you keep on this route, you're gonna end up seeing a lot more lab coats in the future.
Well, I really have to hand it to Megan here. This surely does look like a dragon skull. It's pretty definitive. Oh wait, what? This isn't the skull? Oh, this is the skull. Oh, that doesn't look like a dragon at all. She even went as far as to say it has big teeth, but this thing is a plant eater. In fact, it's part of the same group as the Pachycephalosaurus. These guys. The headbetters. You've seen these guys before. It's in the same family. If you stretch skin over it, this is what it would look like. It's adorable. Not scary. And it probably had feathers on it too. The Draconics lived 65 million years ago in the Cretaceous period on a rock layer where we find no humans. But we do find a bunch of other random shit that we do not see today.
Language is important, people. It really is. I maintain that is a dragon. So does the people who made. So does the guy who discovered it. Hello, Dracorex hogwartsia.
Hey lady, just because the guy who got to name it called it a dragon does not mean that it's a freaking dragon.
Make this stuff up if you try.
Are we to infer from the name of this dinosaur that Hogwarts 2 is real? Because by your logic, that's what we're supposed to take from this.
See, that kind of looks like a dragon too. So does that one.
Megan, lots of things look like other things. That does not inherently make it one of those things. Paleontology is really complex. Yes, the discoverer of this dinosaur bone called it a dragon. That does not make it a dragon. It makes him a geek.
See, the reason they don't want you to say dragon is because they know there's evidence that people have seen something that looks like this. And if that is the case, that there's evidence that people have seen something that looks like these things, then their whole time scale is off by, several hundred million years. And they do not want there to be any possibility that a person ever saw a dinosaur.
Oh geez, I think you forgot something. There you go.
course, they can't explain why are there prehistoric drawings on caves of dinosaurs. They can't explain that. They don't even want you to know that. If you notice, we have not seen one of those here, have we?
That might be because those pictures or drawings don't exist, and sorry I have to stoop to this childish level, but produce the pictures or it didn't happen.
We've not seen a cave painting of dinosaurs, but they exist. They exist.
Yeah, no. There's no dinosaurs in cave paintings. I used to believe that when I was a believer in creationism, but I couldn't deny the fact that none of the drawings looked exactly like what we know those things to look like today, when they were really good at drawing bulls, cats, birds, elephants, all sorts of things. Why did they always draw the dinosaurs so wrong? Well, most of these have been seen as either hoaxes or just complete misunderstandings at what they're looking at. Most of them are lizards, and some of them are just natural formations on the rock that kind of look like brontosauruses.
The cave painting looks like this. Those things on the back.
This is the only one I could find that's not labeled a hoax, and I'm having a lot of trouble seeing it.
Now, what other animal do you know has things like that on the back?
This guy and this guy, just to name a couple. So you must have studied these, right? You've been to the sites, looked them over, done tests on the materials, or where did you see them?
Wow, cave paintings of dinosaurs. What's your source, Megan?
In a magazine. It was in a Creation magazine.
Yeah, because that's a scholarly source.
Good one.
Of course, and they're going to say, oh, they made that up. They didn't make it up. They were in caves in France. Found in caves in France. So, there are pictures of these things. They're everywhere. There's also some in Egypt. And Egyptian hieroglyphics. They just pass right over those. We'll go to Egypt in here, and you'll see there won't be any hieroglyphics of dinosaurs on the walls, but they existed.
Citation, please.
This is a fantasy.
It's not my fantasy. You know what I mean? Not into hairy chicks.
This is a fantasy, like dragons.
Wow. I wonder if you know that you just contradicted yourself.
Is that a Freudian slip? You just admitted that dragons are a fantasy.
Except dragons aren't a fantasy.
What the fuck are you talking about? What are you trying to say?
But their idea of, oh, well, dragons aren't real. No, this isn't real.
Oh, no. No, we have bones.
This is something they've just made up. Incredible.
Nope. We have bones.
Yeah, not even close. That model there is based off of the 3.2 million-year-old type specimen of Australopithecus afarensis, nicknamed Lucy. The dimensions of her body are scaled precisely to her skeleton, and the parts we don't have from her, like an articulated skull, can be filled in with the more than 500 other specimens of her species discovered since 1974.
Though this emerging picture, you know why it says emerging picture? Because they have no evidence for it.
It's an emerging picture because we are discovering more and more about this particular period of human development all the time.
No evidence for Australopithecus, you say? Like the fossils in front of you?
And first of all, they don't agree on these points. Not at all.
So you are the expert on what scientists agree on? I'm sorry, but I'm going to need sources on that.
Humans evolved from an ape ancestor. There are plenty of scientists who don't believe that at all.
Yeah, by plenty, you mean about 1% of all scientists in fields relevant to evolution. Cherry pick all you like, Megan. I can just as easily cherry pick historians who deny the Holocaust, physicists who think that the Earth is the center of the universe, and architects who think that the US government blew up the Twin Towers. In any large enough dataset, you're going to find outliers. Every field has crackpots in it, and this is no exception. As far as minority opinions go in science, what separates the occasional genius who is right from crackpots who are wrong is a model's ability to make accurate predictions about future data. By this standard, creation scientists will always fail.
Really, Megan? Tell you what, if you can name me a single paleoanthropologist who doesn't believe that either we are descended from apes or that we are still apes ourselves, I'll give you $1,000. Seriously.
And they evolved through the same unpredictable process as every other living thing. No, scientists don't all agree on either of those things because there are scientists who do not agree with this.
I'll admit that there are an insignificant number of people that are involved in the scientific community that deny evolution, but they are not what we would call, quote, scientists. If you go through the list of scientific evolution deniers, you'll find that some of these people are not even part of the scientific community. Some of these people are park rangers, and others are just trying to sell you shit. Back in the day, Don Exodus made an excellent video where he tracks down all of these people on the list who deny evolution. Check it out. It's fucking awesome. I miss this guy. He had amazing content.
There are gaps in the fossil record, and many fossils are fragmentary. And those gaps just happen to be the gaps that would prove this theory right.
I'm sure the other skeptics will tell you, if they haven't already, we have enough fossils of human transitional species that we can tell what the complete picture looks like. If you skip over one number on a dot-to-dot picture, the end result will almost certainly resemble the same thing as if you hadn't made the mistake.
But because there are gaps, we're supposed to believe that everything they say is right. We're just supposed to ignore the fact that there are gaps. It must be right.
But we don't ignore the gaps. We study the gaps and try to find where fossils that might fill those gaps might be, and researchers go looking for them. Human evolution is like any other field of science. It is continuously improving on what we know.
Frankly, I think the gaps are important. And you better fill in the gaps before you tell me to believe it, because I don't believe it without the gaps filled in.
That's bullshit.
Bullshit! Bullshit?
Because the criteria required for fossilization to even take place are so specific and so difficult to achieve, the fossil record can be expected to represent only a minute fraction of everything that ever lived. This is why you're always going to have gaps in the fossil record, even if you find every fossil that exists. This image is a pretty good analogy for the current status of the fossil record. We know what the picture is supposed to look like even though we don't have all the pieces, which we'll never have. Despite that, an overabundance of transitional fossils, just between humans and ancient apes, have been found in the past 50 years, including the so-called missing link, whose cast is on the wall opposite to you. Go take a look, Megan.
Gaps? Like where? Name one. I dare you. Sure, they exist, but they're being filled in faster than a creationist can say Ardipithecus. I think it's time that we stop apologizing for the fossil record, and start showing off the true immensity of treasures that have been recovered over the past few centuries. So far, in this century alone, we have made wondrous discoveries, filling in some of the most spectacular and strange parts of life's story, like the origin and diversification of whales, the transition from marine fish to land-based tetrapods, the beginnings of the first dinosaurs from their archosaur ancestors, the ichthyosaur's earliest land-based precursors, the possible common ancestor of humans and chimps, even the beginnings of our own genus from Australopithecus, and countless others.
I too would like to see a more complete picture of the fossil record, including the history of human evolution. However, just because we don't have that information doesn't mean that you, me, or anybody else can simply fill in the gaps with whatever makes us feel good. Here's a gap, therefore my feel-good answer does not cut it in real science.
And there's huge gaps here.
Fossils for human ancestors are rare, and they're rare because humans have generally lived in areas that had very poor conditions for creating fossils. I say this in every fucking video, but fossils are rare because the conditions to make them are very specific. The incredible thing though, despite how rare human ancestor fossils are, we actually have filled in most of these gaps. We have such a good idea of what this picture looks like that it's undeniable. Look at these pictures. I stole these from the King Crocodile video. Check it out, link in the description. What? You just spent 3 minutes talking about how Lucy is a fantasy, and then you just walk right past her fossils without even explaining how those fossils are a fantasy. We can see right in front of us the structure of a humanoid that is clearly related to us, and you do not even blink.
I had a similar reaction, but yours is cooler.
difference between Neanderthals and our own species.
You can't be serious. Just seconds ago, you were going on about fossils this, gaps that, and when you actually passed replicas of Lucy and the Turconaboy Homo erectus or gaster, some of the most precious fossils on Earth, this is the verbal diarrhea that slips out of your pudgy gob.
Really? Did you really just walk past Lucy? Do you even realize how important she is? That's the fucking Mona Lisa of paleontology, and you just walked right fucking past her. Only a creationist will rant about how there are no transitional fossils before silently passing, without any irony, one of the most compelling transitional forms in the world. You can't make this shit up.
Okay, again, you just skipped a bunch of really important stuff. You walked through the entire history of what we know about the evolution of the human being, and your refutation of that is, quote, end quote.
No one considers that Neanderthals could just be people with big foreheads.
I'm sorry, Megan, what? People with big foreheads? Okay, you watch way too much Eric Hovind.
You know how Eastern Europeans have bigger brows and, deeper set eyes, and we're supposed to believe that, no, these are ape ancestors? No, I don't think so. I think they're just exactly like how human beings are so different. Humans are all so different from different places, and they look different. Neanderthal man simply could have been a guy they found with a really big forehead.
There is a difference between microevolution, or changes within a species that allow it to adapt to environment and conditions, macroevolution, which is a series of microevolutions that result in a new species altogether, and not being related much at all, which is the case with the Neanderthals. One of the other skeptics has a chart demonstrating the DNA relationships between humans, chimpanzees, and Neanderthals. I'll be sure to include it.
Let's ignore for the moment that no one claims that Neanderthal is ancestral to Homo sapien. The two share a common ancestor, but Neanderthals are definitely not human. But since you insisted that Neanderthals were just humans with big foreheads, I'm afforded the opportunity to have some fun with you. Let's ignore the volumes of evidence from comparative anatomy that show that Neanderthals are not human, and let's just look at their mitochondrial DNA. As luck would have it, in an extremely rare case where organic material is preserved for thousands of years, a Neanderthal's toe bone was removed from a Siberian cave and had its mitochondrial DNA analyzed by the Neanderthal Genome Project. In case you don't know, Megan, DNA can be used to determine how closely organisms are related. The most general rule and the most simplified and dumbed-down summary of genetics possible is this: the more DNA sequences you have in common with someone, the more closely you're related to them. This is an image from a peer-reviewed article published in Cell, which I'll link in the description. It depicts the amount of differences in base pairs between various groups. As you can clearly see, humans have the fewest differences in their DNA between one another, just as we expect. Percentage-wise, we can see that humans and chimps have more DNA in common than do humans and Neanderthals, meaning that chimpanzees are more human-like than Neanderthals were. Now, you said that Neanderthals are just people with big foreheads. So tell me, Megan, what does that make chimpanzees, since they're more human-like than Neanderthals are? Come on, Megan. Basic set theory. If A is a subset of B and B is a subset of C, then A is a subset of C. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot, huh, lady?
You are absolutely right. Humans from across the globe come in all shapes and sizes, heights, widths, different facial structures, different arm lengths, different altogether. But you know what the one thing that all humans have in common? DNA. We all have human DNA. And Neanderthals do not have human DNA. In fact, human DNA is more similar to chimpanzee DNA than it is to Neanderthal DNA. Let that sink in. Neanderthal is not just a man with a really big forehead.
If by Neanderthal man, you mean Homo neanderthalensis, it was actually an entire species, not just some dude. I suppose, Megan, you're not aware of the hundreds of Neanderthal skeletons found across Europe. We've got Neanderthal babies, children, subadults, adults, and old of both genders, as well as the genome of dozens of specimens sequenced by Briggs et al., proving that they weren't just some group of Eastern European dudes, but a morphologically, anatomically, physiologically, and genetically unique species. Anyway, we don't even descend from Homo neanderthalensis. They are our sister species, daughters of the same mother, the mother likely being Homo heidelbergensis. And they were apes, by the way, by definition. Just like you, Megan. So, in conclusion, folks, her points were sloppier than an orangutan's afterbirth. And if the Dunning-Kruger effect was a disease, she would be patient zero.
Alright, Megan, do you have any words of wisdom for this room?
My mom's looking for us.
Oh, okay. Wait, where are you going? Megan, where are you going? Oh, the gift shop. Oh, why don't you stick around in the gift shop and I'm gonna buy you something in the gift shop. I'll see if they're selling any fucking clues.
I doubt you would know how to use one of those if you gift wrapped it and sent along very detailed instructions. There's a reason that natural selection works as it does, and perhaps people such as Megan will be weeded out of the gene pool at some point.
By now, you've probably seen video of a woman named Megan Fox, no, not that one, going through an evolution exhibit at Chicago's Field Museum. She is simply stunned by what she believes is brainwashing all around. Which brings to mind the Stephen Colbert line, "Reality has a well-known liberal bias." She can't even pronounce the word eukaryotes, but she has no problem saying that there's no way we evolved from them. She says it's impossible for creatures to have evolved from living in the water to living on land, because the Bible says God made creatures of the water to live in the water, and God made creatures of the land to live on the land. She even says it's not like their fins fell off and they grew feet, which is not exactly how it happened. She also claims that dragons exist, but liberals are covering it up. By the way, Megan Fox homeschools her 3 children, so if you weren't frightened before, you should be horrified now. But I'm not just making this video to point out her ignorance. I don't have that kind of time. I'm making this video because Megan Fox has actually been waging a war against my local library. I grew up in Orland Park, Illinois. My parents still live there. And Megan Fox and her colleague have been going after the Orland Park Public Library for a variety of reasons. She's mad that she can't use the computers in the children's section because they're specifically reserved for children. She claims that the adult computer section is where people watch porn, because that's what you do in a public library. And she's really mad because the library has chosen not to censor what people do on the internet. To that end, she and her friend have filed more than 130 open records requests, which the library is legally obligated to fulfill. The library has had to hire 2 people specifically to fulfill these requests, and the entire charade has cost the library more than $125,000. Some of that money is covered by insurance. A lot of it isn't. And this is money that should be going toward great programming for the children and the community of Orland Park. It's almost like Fox wants to bring everyone else down to her level of education. So here's where you come in. I have set up a fundraiser to raise money for the library. I doubt we'll be able to make up for all the damage Fox has caused, but it's something. If you're willing to chip anything in, there is a link down below. Anything you can give would help. I promise you that everything I raise will be given to the library, and I'll provide proof of that on my website by the end of the month. If you watched Fox's museum video and you were as frustrated with it as I was, this is one way we can fight back. So I hope you'll join me.
Hey everybody, I'm Megan Fox, and today we are going to talk about the nut at the museum. That's right, that's me. And I'm having my coffee in my dragon mug. See? This is the mug I got at the Creation Museum. It's got dragons on it. It's pretty cool. They have a really neat display there about dragon lore, which is a lot of fun. So the reason why I'm bringing this up now and not 3 years ago is because I just didn't think there was anything to say. It was so outrageously ridiculous, overreaction. The response was just so much of an overreaction that what was there to say? None of you wanted to give me the chance to talk about it, so why try? Instead, you wanted to hate me and send me death and rape threats, which, yeah, thanks for that.
Let me explain something right off. What we say about you or anybody else on the internet should stay on the internet and should never escalate into cyberbullying or any sort of threats, whether they be on the internet or in the real world. I myself do not condone that sort of behavior and will never condone that on behalf of my subscribers or fans. I also think that other skeptics in the community should come out and make it explicitly clear that they also do not condone this sort of thing.
And the Armored Skeptic, everybody was like, oh, the Armored Skeptic got her. I still haven't watched that video. I don't feel any need to do that. I don't feel the need to watch a video dehumanizing me. That led to some pretty serious threats against me and my family. It was upsetting and uncalled for.
No. See, that's not how this works. The threats are completely uncalled for, but the videos by the Armored Skeptic and others were completely in bounds because your video was out on YouTube, and that means that people can respond to it.
And I think you've noticed from my videos that I'm a girl that likes to laugh. And every time I would go to the Field Museum, I would laugh walking through that exhibit, The Evolving Earth, because it only shows one point of view, and it's the same in every history museum you go to.
That would be because museums are in the business of telling people the facts and the science behind their exhibits. They generally don't give a flying rip about any fantasy that you or I or anybody else might entertain. It's sometimes hard to hear, but science doesn't care about what you think or feel. Science is only interested in the cold, hard truth, and anything that gets in the way of that goal is irrelevant. And as an example of that, I point out your whole Dracorex Hogwartsia ramble.
Now, I've been labeled a creationist. I am not a Ken Ham creationist. I went to the Creation Museum, I saw their side of the story too, and I thought, maybe. I don't know. The answer is I don't know, and either do you. You don't know either.
First off, it is really bad form to tell someone else what they do or don't know. I will tell you if I don't know something, and you should demand the same from yourself. Don't let people tell you what you do or do not know. That being said, I don't know is a perfectly valid answer to a question in science. And as I believe I said earlier, the I don't knows serve as markers for where further research is needed. Saying I don't know, however, does not mean that you get to sub in your fantasy flavor of the week, nor does it mean that you get to throw up your hands and discard all the other facts that we have discovered.
So, I didn't even know that video was going to go up on YouTube, actually, and so I don't even know what I said in it. It was all off the top of my head. I'm sure there was stuff in it that was wrong. I'm not a scientist. These are just my opinions on things. It was just my observations on the exhibit.
And if a video goes up on YouTube, your opinions and observations will almost certainly get critiqued.
And why I think that the science community is really full of themselves. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. I know, I'm not the only one who thinks that. I don't know if evolution is true. I don't know if it's true. Either do you.
Actually, as far as the evidence, the fossil record, and all of the data we have to this point, I believe that the theory of evolution is true. But it is also a work in progress as more animals and fossils are being found and more research is being done. The study of evolution will continue for a very, very long time.
I'm just not convinced. And you may be convinced, but you can't prove it. And that is the point. I was watching this debate between all the evolutionists and some intelligent design guys, including, the great William F. Buckley, who was on my side, by the way, and David Berlinski, who is like one of the smartest guys I've ever heard and ever read. If you haven't read his book, The Devil's Delusion, you should, because it's really, really good. And, those guys aren't convinced that the Darwinists are right, but they're idiots. I don't think that you could call them idiots. Like, I don't think anyone could call David Berlinski an idiot. The man is a world-renowned mathematician. He has 1,000,000 degrees.
I don't believe anyone is calling these people idiots. You don't have to put full faith into the theory of evolution, and you can still be fairly intelligent. That does not mean that there are not other flaws in yourself as a person. For example, an intelligent person can still be insane. They can still suffer from mental health conditions, and they can still be in the thrall of a psychosis. By the way, I'm not saying that you are any of these.
You can't say that because someone is not convinced by Darwinian theories that they are a moron. And that's what was said about me, that I'm just an idiot. No, I'm not an idiot. I'm not convinced, and I'm in good company. So yeah, maybe some stuff I said, but I say a lot of stuff that's funny. It was a joke. A lot of it was a joke.
Sorry, it didn't come across that way, and it's also irrelevant. If you post something on YouTube, it's out there for the public to see and comment on, and there's no way to know in advance how they will react to it. And people take jokes badly in person, much less on the internet.
Because I like to ridicule people like that, who are so sure of everything.
Great! More power to you. However, if you ridicule someone, you should expect to take some return fire.
You don't have a great sense of humor, okay? I think it's unfortunate, and I think maybe you're seeing it now, that back then, like 3 years ago, it was still okay to tear into somebody who didn't think the same way as you about whatever. Today, it's a lot less acceptable because of Antifa, where it leads. And it leads to violence against people who don't think the way you do. And that's what happened to me.
Yes, but you are missing a step in this process. Your video got uploaded on your channel to YouTube, and other people saw it and took exception to how you were so dismissive about one of the biggest archaeological finds ever, for example. People have a right to respond to what they see as bullshit. You want to get rid of some of the heat? How about not auditing the Field Museum? How about you do a video where you take the tour, ask some insightful questions, and try to learn more about the subject? Then comment on what you saw.
There was pictures of my children posted online with pornography photoshopped onto them, and I was sent photographs of dead, ripped open women, and it was awful.
And again, none of that is cool, and it shouldn't happen.
It was awful. And what? For what? For what? Because I walked through a museum and had some thoughts. Who cares what I think about evolution? Really, do you really care what I think? Everyone's like, will you homeschool your kids? Yeah, I do. It's none of your damn business anyway. It's none of your damn business what my kids learn. Teach your own kids whatever the hell you want to teach them. And if you want to teach them that you came from a monkey, well, go for it. I think the most important thing to learn is about what the science community is putting out there, but also to study what is the major criticism of Darwinism. That's not allowed in schools. I'm not even saying I wouldn't teach, you don't teach creationism in school. Fine, I don't care. But why wouldn't you honestly put out there the honest criticism from very intelligent people that there is of Darwinism?
I think teaching the criticisms of Darwinism is probably a good thing. Many people, the Armoured Skeptic included, said that Darwin got a few things wrong in his initial theory, then made more mistakes when he later tried to improve the theory. That is information that should be taught so that young people can know the whole truth.
That's called critical thinking. It's presenting, here's this idea, here's what we believe, and then here's the criticism. Why wouldn't you want kids to learn how to think critically? Maybe they would look at the criticism and say, well, I don't think that has any water, so I'm going to go with the Darwinists. You guys act like there is only one way to think about the universe and the beginnings of life and man, and there isn't. There's more than one way. I think it's entirely possible that God set evolution into motion. I believe, because I'm a Christian, that God did it somehow. I don't know how. I think saying you know how, or that it was all random chance. No, I don't agree.
Well, that's fine. People don't have to agree on this subject or almost any other. However, please note that people are not stupid. We were able to pick up on the fact that you are a Christian based on some of the things you said, and those positions also are open to criticism and critique.
But you certainly have the right to. So something happened the other day, yesterday to be exact. A friend sent me another video by the Armoured Skeptic. And this one was about Bill Nye, the science guy, and how he'd just gone right over the edge. And this is what we had been warning for years and years. People like me had been saying these science is settled people are political. This is not about science, it's about politics. And a lot of Darwinism isn't about science, it's about atheism. It's about humanism, it's about materialism. And I think that's my main problem with it. If it were just about the science, I think I wouldn't have a problem with it. But it isn't about the science, it's about proving God doesn't exist.
Actually, atheism and the proof that God does not exist does not depend at all on evolution. Atheism does not address evolution at all. God can be proven to not exist simply by examining the fallacies, falsehoods, and atrocities in the Bible, which I do in my series, Atheist Bible Studies.
And that's really not the purpose of science, is it? Science should be about discovering the world and how it works. And if science happens to prove that God does exist, then you should be happy to find that proof. But it does feel like a lot of science is out to disprove the existence of God, and that is your only purpose. And that's silly. I mean, wouldn't you want to know where the evidence leads? If the evidence leads you towards an intelligent designer, well then we should go follow that evidence.
Sorry, but that's not where the evidence leads, and the problem is that there are too many people on the creationist side who will not consider any evidence whatsoever if it goes against what the Bible says. So while you say that atheists, humanists, and secularists should be open to the possibility that the science points to God, I would point out to you that in your visit to the Field Museum, you were not so open to the possibility that the science pointed to the evolution for the evolving of human life.
There are people who disagree with the Darwinists, and they're people much smarter than me with lots more degrees. The idea that a person like me can't have an opinion without being threatened with rape, death, and the removal of her children from her home is really disgusting.
Well, again, I don't condone that sort of behavior, and I will work to see if I can get an explicit statement of this from others in the skeptic community. I also don't think that the Armoured Skeptic, nor any of the other mainstream skeptics, endorse or condone what happened to you, and I invite them to explicitly say so. However, while we can caution our subscribers and fans against this sort of thing, we cannot control what they do. That being said, this is like the third or fourth time you have mentioned this, and at some point it seems like you are beginning to hide behind these threats, as if to ward off any criticism of what you said at the Field Museum. This is not how debate, argument, criticism, and response works. However it happened, your point of view got posted to the internet, and the general viewers can now chime in. You could take the video down, but that would not help much as it's now available over other channels now.
The Armoured Skeptic put out a video about Bill Nye, and right around minute 17, he mentioned moi. And this is so satisfying.
This world of ours is full of choice, but must I choose between only John or Joyce? All my options only. My has its own voice, 'cause my junk is so or a versatile love may have some. It's evolution, ain't nothing new. There's nothing taboo about a stew. If they're alive, I'll date 'em. Channing or Janitate 'em. I'm down for anything. Don't box in my give someone new a then give yourself props.
That's exactly the right message, Rachel. Nice job.
Bill, I am trying so hard to be family friendly for this new YouTube. You're fucking killing me here, Bill. This episode drove everybody fucking crazy. Now you've got creationists like Megan Fox, you know that museum lady? She's writing articles saying that Bill's indoctrinating straight people to become giant whores just like the LGBT. And she has a point! What are we supposed to take from this, Bill? This legit comes across as propaganda.
Yeah, I do have a point. I have had a point all along, and that is that the science community has been completely politicized. And if you are just seeing it now, well, welcome to the club. But I kind of would like an apology for 3 years ago.
Sorry, but skeptics that don't buy the idea of global climate change, hook, line, and sinker, have already discovered that large areas of the scientific fields in those areas have become extremely politicized, to the point that they've falsified their data to point to a conclusion that meets their personal and political agendas. Also, the Armoured Skeptic does not owe you an apology for your video. He's allowed to comment on it just like anybody else is.
Because I think you guys went overboard on me, like by a lot. But I watched another one of his videos. It was about Lacey Green deciding she was going to open up her conversations to people on the other side of the political spectrum. And during this video, he says that we really should do more face-to-face interviews because it humanizes people instead of response videos. You think? I think that the Armored Skeptic has a lot of nerve to talk about not dehumanizing people after what he did to me and my family. He has a lot of nerve.
I'm going to take this a step further. I don't believe that either the Armored Skeptic, nor June, nor anyone else around him has done anything to you. I found a total of 2 other skeptics who critiqued your visit to the Field Museum, and I doubt that they told their subscribers or fans to go after you. It could have been anyone visiting any page that happens to have access to the Field Museum video, including people visiting your page. As of today, you have 1.28 million views to that video. You have likes and dislikes turned off. But if you look at the comments section, out of the first 10 comments, 8 of them are negative. Are you saying that the Armored Skeptic is responsible for all of those?
He never tried to contact me and have a face-to-face interview with me before he did what he did. So, and I think that he should know, 500,000 people saw the video he did of me. And of those people, probably 50,000 of them sent me hate mail and death threats. None of it was acceptable. The only person who reached out to me to have a conversation was Hemant Mehta, and I thank him for that because that podcast was really great, and we had a chance to sit down and talk about why do you care what some mom from the suburbs thinks about evolution? Why do you care? And is it a shock? You know people like this exist. And one of the things that Hemant said to me that I will never forget was, well, you're just so confident about it. That's what bothers people, how confident you are. What? So you're allowed to be confident that Darwin was completely right on and evolution is a fact, but I'm not allowed to be confident otherwise?
There is a difference between confidence and arrogance.
And I'm not really I'm not confident that it didn't happen. I never said that. I said, I don't know, and I don't think you do either. Frankly, your confidence is annoying.
On the backs of crystals.
Because you're so sure you know what happened 300 billion years ago or whatever. That sounds so ridiculous. You know what the weather was like, you know what everything was like. The weather people don't even know what it's going to be like on Friday. But you think you know what the weather was like 300 billion years ago? I think you're being a little bit overconfident.
I could throw your own argument right back at you. Why do you care so much? Go live your life. Enjoy your suburban lifestyle, hang out with your dog and the kids, and don't bother with the icky question of evolution. Now, will you do this? I don't think so. But it's not healthy to get bothered to the point of nearly crying at a fucking museum exhibit.
You know how the Earth formed? No, you don't.
On the backs of crystals.
But you don't know how it happened. And then you present things to people with these, videos that you make. But this is how it happened. This is how the Earth was formed. You don't know. No one knows. That was the point.
If this was the point of the video, then you were not joking when you made those comments at the museum, unlike what you just said earlier. Also, your statements and positions that you made at the museum are backed up by statements made in this video. So aside from the threats, which were stupid and not acceptable, I don't see what you're complaining about. You made a video, it got uploaded for the world to see. Now be an adult about it and take responsibility for your own point of view.
There are some things we can know. It's not like everything is an unknown. I'm just saying that there are big things that you don't know. And it's frustrating for people who are skeptical of Darwin. To everywhere you go, for it to be presented as completely accepted facts. Well, some of them are accepted facts, but some of them are disputed. And to not even mention the disputes or the hoaxes, there have been so many evolutionary hoaxes. And to not even mention them, to pretend like they don't exist, that's propaganda. This thing does not exist, and yet the Field Museum still has it on the wall for young impressionable children to walk by and think that something like this is actually real. It isn't. But I point that out, and suddenly I am the worst person on earth. If the Field Museum can't bother itself to fix this, what else are they wrong about in their exhibit that we don't know? So, come on. Don't pretend like this stuff hasn't happened. It has. And I don't think it's a crime against humanity to say, I'm not sure I buy it. I'm not sure. No, I'm unconvinced. I'm not anti-science. I love science. Science is great when it's actual science and not trying to push a political agenda on me. I like actual science. Electricity, the phone, indoor plumbing. So this Bill Nye thing is the perfect example. It's the scientism gone crazy. Scientism is a cult. I told you this 3 years ago and everyone laughed at me, that scientism is a cult. It's a real thing. To these people, science is God. And so they are religiously devoted to it.
I do refer to climate change believers as the Church of Global Climate Change because they act so much like cultists. I'm going to go ahead and skip much of the rest of this. The full video will be linked in the description below. I will give you one more part where Megan talks about how she and the Armoured Skeptic should be on the same political side.
That's the other thing that bothers me, is that this Armoured Skeptic guy is really, I guess from like the couple videos I watched, he's very anti-SJW, and he seems like similar politics to mine. So instead of discovering what it was that I really thought, he went after somebody who could have been an ally to him. I'm on the same side as you guys. So it's really unfortunate that you turn your guns on somebody on your side. And that's another problem with the right, is that a lot of people on the right act like Puritans. And anyone who doesn't subscribe to the idea that they think is absolutely where they should be, they just kick out of the Klan. And the Democrats are different. They circle the wagons around anybody who's under attack that identifies with them. And they will defend them to the death. They will defend Marion Barry, who was doing crack with hookers in a hotel room. They will defend anybody on their side. And yet our side doesn't defend anybody. As soon as somebody goes off the reservation or says something unpopular, it's a circular firing squad. And everybody turns their guns on that person and fires. Well, that's not how you win. It is not how you win. And if you're interested in free speech, by the way, Armored Skeptic, who appears to be interested in free speech, how come you weren't interested in mine?
You got your free speech. You got to speak in your video, and the skeptics have responded using the same freedom of speech. That's how these rights work. They work equally for everyone.